Hello everyone, I hope all of you are doing great, and in today's video, this is going to be a long video, and in this video we are going to discuss an entire module of the SAT. It has questions from some of the recent papers, and hopefully we'll try to work out all the questions, and it is going to help you guys a lot. So bear with me. If you do not understand any question, or if you do not understand what's going on, you can always go back and watch that video again, watch that question again, or watch the entire video again. And it's always fruitful to understand the underlying technique, the underlying approach. Most of the students that I've worked with, one of the major problem that they are faltering on is the fact that they're always concerned with answers, right? What's the answer going to be? Is it A? Is it B? Is it C? Is it D? That is their major concern. However, answer is only something secondary. Answer is only something secondary, and the underlying approach is very important. So we'll go about with all the questions over here today, and try to discuss and talk about the approaches that are related and relevant with all the questions that are there, right? So let's start with the first one. Normally, when the paper starts, the SAT starts. It starts with craft and structure, and in craft and structure, firstly we have words in context, right? So the first question that we have over here, it says, smart watches and wireless speakers tend to contain batteries that can't be readily blank. Sustainability researchers Mariana Lopez and Davila warns that because new batteries cannot be new batteries cannot be put in once the old ones no longer work, the gadgets stop functioning and are usually disposed of as trash. So this is the question, and we do understand that they're talking about the fact that batteries over here cannot be changed. So obviously, you have to work for a word that means to be changed, or that means to be replaced, or something like that, right? So over here, if you look at the options, you do not have prevented. Obviously, you cannot take prevented as your answer. You cannot take invented as your answer, and you cannot take rated as your answer. Over here, if you see replace, it is the perfect word that you needed, and that is why the approach that I give to students when they're solving words in context question is that they try to avoid, for that matter, and avoid the options first, and try to get about the word that should come in first, right? So first you should try and understand what should be the word that should be the answer over here, and then you should go on to the options. That is something that is pertinent, and that is something that is advised for the students, right? If you go first to the options, normally chances are that you can get a little confused over there, right? So replaced over here will be the answer, and the best answer for this question over here will be option A, right? So moving on, this was the first question. So the second question, so it says, the second question is, the following text is adapted from Kenneth Grahame's 1908 novel, The Wind in the Willows. The mole is dazed after briefly meeting a stranger while traveling with a friend. The mole, still a moment, held in thought as one wakened suddenly from a dream, who struggles to call it and can recapture nothing but a dim sense or beauty. The beauty till that fades away in its turn. As used in the text, what does the word recall most nearly mean? So what they're asking you over here is the meaning of the word recall, right? So if you read it over here, struggles to recall it, right? So struggles to, if you talk about it, struggles to think about it, struggles to remember it, struggles to something like that. So recall is going in line, very closely in line with remembering something. So obviously it cannot be deny, it cannot be start, and it cannot be overlooked. So the best answer for your question over here is going to be option B, right? So B will be the answer over here. Let's move on. So this is the third question. Again, you have words in context over here. It says, there is no doubt that Irving Langmuir must have proved himself to be extraordinarily blank, understanding some of the most advanced concepts in the field of chemistry. In 1932, his remarkable talent and hard work was recognized when he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for his discoveries and investigations in surface chemistry. Now, obviously, if he was so great at it, then he must be, good at it. He must be comfortable comfortable with it, something like that. So it cannot be modest about, it cannot be light-hearted about, and it cannot be dispassionate about. It has to be what? It has to be adept at. So he was adept at something, and that is why he won the award. He got everything that he was, willing for. All of those things went along because of the interest that he had in that particular thing. That is why the best answer over here for this question is going to be option B, right? So let's move on. Now this says some robots such as 𝐕 developed in 1995 and 𝐂𝐸 developed in 2011 feature humanoid characteristics like the ability to respond to voice command so that people will find it easier to interact with them. While these features can help to blank the feelings of comfort in people, a robot that looks too human can fall into the uncanny valley, meaning that its appearance unintentionally unsettles those who encounter it. So what it's trying to say is that can help to blank the feelings of comfort in people. So bring about, you need a word that means to bring about that particular feeling. That is why the answer over here, obviously it cannot be constrict, obviously it cannot be counterbalance, and obviously it cannot be repudiate. The best answer over here is going to be engender. Now to engender something is basically to cause something, right? To cause upon something. That is why the best answer over here is going to be option D, right? Okay, so guys, now let's move on to the fifth question. Now this fifth question is again words in context, which tells us that we are going to get around 4 to 5 questions that will be from words in context. So if we have a good vocabulary, or if we know how to work with the words in the questions within a context, it's going to be it's going to be good with us, right? So let's start. Economists have long observed that firms in related industries tend to cluster in the same area, as is the case in Sheffield, UK, where many initial iron and steel processing firms, as well as iron and steel tube manufacturers, are located. The factors causing such clustering are blank, we don't know what they are. What drives firms in certain industries to cluster may not specially be relevant among other industries. So it's changing basically. In one of the industries, it's something else. In the other industry, it's something else. So it has to be something related, a word that you need that should be, close to the word changing. That is what you need over here. So obviously it cannot be impressive, it cannot be unknown, and it cannot be focused. It has to be what? It has to be variable, right? So variable means that it is changing, and that is what is going to be the answer over here. That is going to be the best answer over here. So again, the best strategy, the best approach is to work out the word before you move on to the options. That is the best way to go about it, right? Now let's move on to this one. This is the main purpose question. Remember, when you're talking about the main purpose question, you need two things, right? You need the central idea of the question, and you need the call to action. You need both of these two things if you want to work it out, right? So let's read this question. The following text is adapted from 𝐷𝐞𝐜 Khurram's 2018 novel Darius the Great is not okay. Darius, a teenager from the United States, is visiting his grandparents, Babu and Mamu, in Iran. They are preparing for holiday celebration. I felt like a tourist, but Babu first with my cap a little more. Even though Mamu had already gotten it settled, he looked me in the eye from time to time like he was looking for something, and thought maybe, just maybe, I had it in me after all. Babu hummed to himself that he smoothed out of my shoulder seams and rested his hands on them. I'm glad you are here to see this. Darius Chan. Maybe I wasn't such a tourist, right? So if you look at this question, it says which choice best states the main purpose of the text, right? So it's basically the behavior of one of the characters over here is affecting how the other one thinks about himself, right? So that is how it goes about it. If you look at the first one, it says to demonstrate that Babu and Darius aren't very interested in going to the new places. So obviously this is not the case. To suggest that Babu is planning to visit Darius in the United States, again not. To emphasize that Darius has been looking forward to an event, again not. To show that Babu affects the way Darius thinks of himself. So yes, this is going to be the best answer over here. Now again, if you look at it, if this question, the food industry has long used thermal technologies to preserve food in large batches. Recent advancements in microwave heating were made through the research in Brazil on preservation of green coconut water. Microwave heating is generally considered to be an improvement over more conventional thermal preservation methods, whereas conventional methods transfer energy from the surface of the food to its interior. Microwave heating uses electromagnetic waves to generate heat within the food itself, thus reducing the industrial cooking times. Now, the underlined portion is starting from here and it's going up till here, and the question is asking you which choice best describes the function of the underlined portion in the text as a whole, right? So you have to look at the underlined portion where it is being talked about the fact that conventional method and the microwave heating is being compared, and one of the advantages of microwave heating is being talked about over here, right? So this is what it is. So if you look at the option, it says it explains why conventional heating methods are popular in commercial application and purposes, a shift away from these methods. No, again, not. It talks about the advantage of microwave heating. It identifies an advantage that infrared heating has over conventional thermal preservation heating. Yes, this can be one of the things over here. It emphasizes the simplicity of infrared heating in technologies. It suggests that there are possible flaws in the infrared heating technologies that have not yet been researched, right? So the best answer over here, it's going to be option B, right? So moving on, in a large community science effort, biologist Abigail Merrill and colleagues collaborated with hundreds of students and other amateur science enthusiasts for more than 3 years to study how the butterfly color and weather conditions relate to butterfly behavior. They found that white butterflies were observed on green flowers more than any other butterflies were, and that butterflies were observed to feed more often on cloudy days than on other days. So if you talk about the main ideas, it clearly is talking about the fact that some of the butterflies, as per their color, were located somewhere else, and as per their on some days, cloudy days, and then it talks about so if you look at A, it says collaboration between professional scientists and members of public is especially useful when studying the behavior of butterflies and other flying insects. A recent study suggested that butterflies' coloring seems to be less relevant to their behavior than the time of the day. A large study suggested that butterfly color and time of day might influence the behavior of certain butterfly. So this is what is going on, that the time of the day and that scenario is basically impacting it, right? Now let's move on. This question is again a main idea question. President Richard Nixon is the most famous for his participation in the 1970s Watergate potential scandal and correlated tale of criminality and eroded ethics involving a constellation of associates such as White House counsel Chuck Colson and White House counsel John Dean. But Nixon's legacy is complex. He has been praised for his role in creating the Environmental Protection Agency, and he once made an attempt at reforming United States healthcare policy that is arguably a precursor to the Affordable Care Act, which becomes the law during the Barack Obama administration. So what they're talking about is that Richard Nixon, he was so good at administration that what he talked about or what he created or what he formulated would later used at Barack Obama's work or some other president's work as well, right? So that is what it is talking about. Option A is saying that Chuck Colson and John Dean were significant figures in the presidency of Richard Nixon. So even if they were, this has nothing to do with what was going on over there. So if you look at option B, it says that Richard Nixon's reputation is primarily due to the actions of his associates. No, some of the Richard Nixon's policies influenced the policies of later presidential administrations. Yes, this is, his policies were influencing, they were so influential that they were even influencing the other presidential administrations. Richard Nixon is commonly linked with an infamous historical event, but his overshadows some of his notable achievements. So again, this is not going to be the answer. The best answer over here is going to be option C. Now, if you look at this question, this is a graph question, and it says Argentina, Brazil, and United States are among the world's leading producers of maize corn, and each country exports a certain percentage of maize each marketing year, which runs from March to February in Argentina and Brazil, and from September to August in United States. A student researching those percentages find that for marketing year 2012 and 13, the percentage maize exported by. So if you look at option A, it says Argentina decreased from the previous marketing year, but remained highest among the three countries. So if you look at it, the Argentina is the triangle, so it has decreased from the previous year, but again this decrease is still more than the rest of the two. So this is in line with the graph and the passage. So that is why we don't even need to read the other options. If you want, you can, but again all the information that is presented in option B, C and D, that is obviously not correct. So over here option A is the correct answer, and this will be the right answer. Now let's move on. It says a student is writing a research paper on the history of irrigation in the United States, situating the development of Ravenna Reservoir created at Los Angeles County, California in 1901 in a larger historical context. The student claims that California's climate renders irrigation an essential component of agriculture in some part of the state but not in others. So what the claim of the student is basically that the California's climate irrigation it's going in some places but not in others, right? So that is what he's saying. The usefulness of irrigation infrastructure in California today cannot be overstated. No, that's not. It's about what it's going in one of the state but not in the other. Sprinkler irrigation systems are a way of irrigating that requires machinery to spray water in all the directions. These are currently used throughout the United States and are prevalent in California. No, that is not the case again. The irrigation system developed by the Hohokam people in the 7th century CE in what is now Arizona was simple, but this system applied hydraulic engineering design features that are in use today throughout California. Again, this cannot be the answer because again, it's not the contrast, right? Natural humidity, which renders irrigation unnecessary or reduces its importance in the northern reaches California, gradually decreases towards the sun-scorched but nonetheless fertile valleys of southern part of the state. So that is what it's saying, that the irrigation is an essential component but in some parts but not in others, right? So it is changing as it is moving on, right? That is why the best answer over here is going to be option D. 𝐂𝐸 are a class of hormones that influence plant growth, including leaf orientation. The tendency of leaves to be larger on the side of their long central axis and the other. University of California, Berkeley biologist Ciara Martinez and colleagues noted that in certain plants in which leaves grow in pairs, auxins will typically be concentrated on opposite sides of each leaf in the pair. Example, on the left side of one leaf in the pair and on the right side of the other. Accordingly, they hypothesized that paired leaves should tend to show opposite sides orientation, and they tested their hypothesis by examining the paired leaves from several species of grapevine. So again, it has to go like they're saying that they should show opposite side orientation. If you look at it, although the number of leaf pairs showing same side orientation is fairly high in the July grape, it is much lower in the maple leaf grape. Now, again, that's not going. If you look at option B, it says in the riverbank grape, gray bark grape, and amur grape, all leaf pairs show opposite side orientation. No, that is not true. If you look at option C, it says although the exact ratio varies by species, the maple leaf grape, forest grape, and the July grape all show more leaf pair with opposite orientation and then the same side. So yes, that is a correct comparison, because if you look at it over here in the graph, the leaves with opposite side orientation are in number. They are more than the ones that have the same side orientation, and that goes for all of them, right? So this one, so if you look at the amur grape, one of it is more than this side, then this graph is more than this, and then this graph is more than this. So you can see this, you can read this, you can understand this from the graph as well, what the context over here of the passages. That is why the best answer for your question over here, it's going to be option C. So you have to make sure when you have a graph question that whatever is written in your graph should go in line with the passage as well. So the passage in the graph should be in line. Daniel Jug and colleagues found that tiling, the practice of turning soil with hose plows and other machines before planting crops, was associated with an increased yield of winter wheat. But some studies of other crops have found the opposite effect, raising the question of whether the increase in yield found by Jug and colleagues is specific to their study crop. However, this doesn't seem to be the case. Now, if you look at it over here, a study using winter wheat yielded 4,860 kilograms per hectare, while tiling only 3,910 kilograms per hectare without tiling. So again, this is not going to be the case. Ficini, Asaka and the colleagues found a similar association in a study using rice. Yeah, so if you look at it, Ficini is basically, this is the one. And if you look at the colleagues, they found a similar association studying using a rice. So they were over here, and if you look at the number, it's 6,400 over here, and if you look at this it was 6,300. So it's almost similar as compared to these. They all have differences, right? So as compared to all the others, these two are relatively similar. That is why the best answer for this question is going to be option B. So you have to look at the graph, then you have to look at the chart or whatever you have to look at that, and you have to look at the passage. Whatever goes in line is going to be your answer. Now let's move on. It says all stainless steel contains varying amount of iron, carbon, and corrosion inhibiting chromium. However, ferritic stainless steel, often used for induction cookers, contains a higher percentage of chromium, at least 10.5%, than does austenitic stainless steel, and a higher concentration of iron, which is responsible for its magnetic properties. Unlike ferritic stainless steel, austenitic stainless steel has a face-centered cubic crystalline structure resulting from addition of nickel to alloy. Austenitic stainless steel has two subtypes: the 300 series, often used for storage containers, and the 200 series, which has a less nickel and more nitrogen than the 300 series, and is used for dishwashers. Thus, the stainless steel used to manufacture. Now you're talking about what stainless steel is used to manufacture, and obviously it will be used to manufacture something that uses stainless steel, and that has a more percentage of it as well, right? So if you look at option B, which is the answer over here, it says the storage containers will have less nitrogen in its composition than stainless steel used to manufacture dishwashers will, right? So again, storage containers, the one that the stainless steel is containing, the storage containers, that is how it is. That is why option B is going to be the best answer over here. If you move on, it says in her large scale sculpture, Casa Isla artist Edra Soto included references to her childhood in Puerto Rico. For example, the sculpture's steel panels have a crisscrossing pattern inspired by the iron gates Soto would love to see in her neighborhood. Now, again, it's not a question, number one. So obviously you're going to eliminate option B and option C. If it's not a question, you're going to eliminate option B and option C. Now moving on, again, because it's not a question, and again, in the indirect speech, no one is asking it. So obviously you won't be starting it with a would, because if you start it with a would, it becomes a question again in an indirect way. You're not going to do that as well. So inherently, this is not a question, whether you talk about direct speech or you talk about indirect speech. That is why the best answer for this question, it's going to be option A, right? Soto would see in her neighborhood, and that would be the best convention of standard English that can be used over here, right? Now moving on. By analyzing the level of radioactive decay within the fossil specimen, scientists can establish the age of that fossil with a high degree of precision. When radioactive elements aren't present, scientists turn to stratigraphy, the analysis of Earth's sediment layer strata, to estimate how old a fossil is based on the age of the strata in which the fossil is found. Now, because the second part is the explanation of the definition is stratigraphy, right? That is why for the definition the best way to use it is colon or dash or something like that. That is why the best answer over here is going to be option C. An object-oriented computer programming language, Python is used by coders like Black Girls Code founder Kimberly Bryant to create programs by manipulating objects that is specifically defined variables or combinations of variables into interacting each other. Conversely, Prolog used in software development and artificial intelligence is not an object-oriented language. Now, if you look at it, because you don't need a verb over here, it's an idea, obviously you need an infinitive over here. So infinitive is basically 2 plus the verb, right? So when you go for 2 plus verb, you only have it in option D, and that is why it's going to be the answer. You're not going to have it with create, because obviously even if you used it, even if you take it, this is something, a verb that is a plural verb, so you cannot use it. Again, and then if you look at A and B, there's a tense problem, because what you're talking about, it's not in continuous, what you're talking about is not in past, right? So obviously you cannot take that over here. So the best answer over here will be option D. Many of the cities and towns that are known by nicknames that correspond to one of their notable features, like landscape, climate, famous residents, or chief exports. For example, the Puerto Rican municipality Arecibo has also been called the Villa of Captain Korea, and a nickname that alludes to what the area is well known for. Antonio de los Reyes Correa, the 17th century army captain who once defended the town. So many of the cities and towns. So if you talk about this, now the first thing that we have to realize when you're talking about this, that if you're using that, you don't need a comma before or after it. You don't need that, right? So all the options that have commas before or after that, they're going to be eliminated. So directly you're going to eliminate option A and option C because they have a comma before that. Now you're left with what? You're left with option B and D. Now the difference over here is in option D, you have a comma after Puerto Rico. So if you had a comma before that, or if you had a comma before the description started, then you would have put, then you would have put the comma after it as well. But because you don't have a comma before the description started, you would not have a comma after the description is ending, right? That is why the best answer over here is not going to be option D, it is going to be option B. Now moving on. While the greater adjutant can be found in places like Tram Chim and Vietnam and 𝐂𝐨𝐧𝐭𝐜𝐾 in Bangladesh, more than 80% of this endangered stork species is found in Assam, India. Their wildlife biologist Dr. Purnima Devi Burman is on the front lines of conservation for efforts that, through community involvement and scientific study, aim to bring adjutants back from their near extinction. Now, again, if you look at it, it says through community involvement and scientific study. So this is what? This is a description, and because you have a comma before the description, you need to have a comma after the description as well, right? So you need a comma after study. That's not there in option A, that's not there in option C, and that's not there in option D. That is why the best answer for this question is going to be option B. That is how we take along with these questions. Now, let's look at it. Stefan Dimitriou, a Romanian impressionist painter whose works are distinctive for their heavy brush strokes, blank, frequently included in the early 20th. Now, because you're talking about an impressionist painter, and because it has to be singular, you're going to eliminate all the options that are plural. This is a basic subject of agreement question. So if you're going to, because you have to make the subject and the verb agree with each other. So if the subject is singular, the verb should also be singular. If the subject is plural, the verb should also be plural. That is how the game works, right? So when you're going to eliminate the plural options, you will be eliminating A, you will be eliminating B, and you will be eliminating D. So the only option that will be left with, you're going to be left with, is option C. Now, moving on. As a behavioral economist, Francesca Gino of Harvard Business School examines human economic behavior through a lens that combining elements of psychology and economies eliminates. Now, this is in a positive, right? So that eliminates how and why and to what effect people make particular choices. This is what is going on. So after the comma, you cannot have a verb. You need to have something that can go on as a clause. So it's best that you go on with a gerund, right? What is a gerund? Gerund is a verb plus ing. So obviously it's not going to be A, C, or D. It's going to be option B. Over here you have a gerund, and that is going to be fit. That is going to fit over here perfectly, right? So combining elements of psychology and economies illuminates. So that illuminates, again, go back to this, that, and the previous sentence. Let's move on. So this is now we have entered the transition questions, right? So moving on. In his essay of the French philosopher Michel de Montaigne explores a relatively light subject, but he addresses heavy affair that in our mind hinders itself. Regardless of the subject matter, Montaigne works the question of his own perspective throughout his essays. Blank, his personal motto was, "What do I know?" Now, again, because he's questioning himself throughout the entire thing, and his own personal motto was, again, what do I know? So it only fits that he's questioning himself, because that was his personal motto. So again, it cannot be option A, it cannot be option B, and it cannot be option C. It has to be option D, fittingly, because it is fitting with what is going on previously, right? Now again, moving on. The World Cup of men's soccer, one of the biggest sporting event on the planet, brought 32 national teams from 6 continents to the host country, Russia, in 2018. The event, which is held every 4 years, has expanded greatly since it was played in Chile in 1962. Blank, the World Cup included only 16 teams from Europe and Americas. Now, if you look at the two events, the first one is talking about 32 teams, the second one is talking about 16 teams. So there is a complete shift over here, right? So you're talking about something that is different. So if something is different, obviously it cannot be similarly, it cannot be then or as a result. It has to be on the other hand. So on the other hand is talking about something that is different. Now let's look at this question. It says, while researching a topic, now again we are moving on to the rhetorical synthesis questions where we have notes and we have to talk about, what is going to be the best answer as per the requirement from the notes. You have to find out the relevant information as per the question, right? So while researching a topic, a student has taken the following notes. In 1897, 20 black US Army infantrymen rode bicycles from Montana to Missouri. The 1900-mile journey took 41 days. The goal was to test the idea of forming a military bicycle corps. In 2022, Eric Cordeno, a black long-distance cyclist, reenacted the journey. Cordeno wanted to honor the infantrymen on the journey's 125th anniversary. The student wants to emphasize how far the infantrymen traveled. So this is what they're trying to talk about. So the distance, you have to find out the distance and where they traveled to, right? So it was basically a 1900-mile journey and they went from Montana to Missouri. That is what you need over here. And you, I think, have it in option D. The US infantrymen rode their bicycles from Montana to Missouri, traveling a total of 1900 meters. So that kilometers, that is exactly what the answer is going to be. That is why the best answer over here, it's going to be option D. So the trick is to understand what the requirement is. If you understand the requirement, you can exactly get that requirement from the information that is there in the options, right? While researching a topic, a student has taken the following note. Mary Kang is a Korean-American portrait photographer. She is based in New York City and Austin, Texas. One of the Kang's photographs features artist Dominique Fung. In portrait, Fung is seated on the floor. 5 of Fung's paintings are resting against the wall behind her. The student wants to describe where Fung is in the photograph to an audience already familiar with Kang and Fung. Which choice most effectively uses relevant information from the notes to accomplish the goal? So if you're talking about this, you're talking about someone. It's just about describing where Fung is. So if you talk about Fung, it clearly says that Fung is seated on the floor, and that is how you're going to take it. So you have to find an option in which it talks about the fact that Fung was seated on the floor, right? So if you look at the options, I think it's option B where you can find Kang's portrait of her. Fung is seated on the floor, right, with the 5 paintings resting against the wall behind her. Now, these are few of those questions where you don't need to really need all the options. You don't need to read all the options, and you don't need to read even all the information that is given. You have to just go towards what is required, the requirement, and then you have to just find that requirement and look for the option that has it, and that is it. You can go on with it. Now, this is question number 26. We are towards the end of the paper. While researching a topic, a student has taken the following notes. Congo is a country in Central Africa. A high percentage of Congo's population, 41.5%, is under 15 years old. It has 76th largest under 15 population in the world. Roughly 40% of Africa's population is under 15 years old, the highest of any continent. According to the United Nations, Africa's high number of young people is an opportunity for the continent's growth, but only if these new generations are fully empowered to realize the best potential. The student wants to emphasize the global rank of Congo's youth population. So it's only about the global rank of youth population. So if you talk about the global rank, it talks about, it was 41.5%, right? So if you look at this number, you only find this number in option C over here, right? That is why even if you don't read all the options, that is fine, because that's all you need, and that is why the best answer for this question is going to be option C. Now, if you look at it, it says, while researching a topic, a student has taken the following notes. The Future of Nostalgia is a scholarly book by literary theorist Svetlana Boym. The book explores the concept of nostalgia from various angles. Chapter 16 discusses the nostalgic home decor of Russian emigrants. Chapter 17 discusses various skeptics takes on concept of nostalgia. In chapter 17, Bohm writes that the poetics of nostalgia combines estrangement and human solidarity, affect and reflection. The student wants to explain what Svetlana Boym writes about in chapter 16. So if you read what's written in chapter 16, the nostalgic home decor of Russian immigrants, that is what you are going to find in your options, right? And the Russian decor, right, so it's the literary theorist Boym explores nostalgia in the 1933 sci-fi action movie Jurassic Park in chapter 3 of her book. That is one of the things. After discussing the nostalgic home decor of Russian immigrants, goes on to discuss the various skeptics that it talks about, right? So if you look at option B, it says literary theorist Svetla Boyam discusses the nostalgic home decor of Russian immigrants in chapter 16. So it's clearly written over here. So that is why option B is going to be your answer. So you just have to, find out what is the objective and then you can go on accordingly. So this was the entire paper. I hope this will help you guys solve it, right? That is how you have to go about it. And the order of the paper, first it's going to be craft and structure, then information and ideas, then standard English conventions, and then at the end of the day, end of the paper, it's going to be expression of ideas. So I hope you guys keep on practicing. Best of luck. We'll be back with more papers. Thank you so much.